Welcome to this walkthrough of the StateOf.js codebase, focusing first on the results subdirectory. And this corresponds to the Gatsby sites that are used to power the actual results, such as the 2020 State of CSS results here. So, quick overview of the codebase. The first thing to know is that unlike traditional static sites using Gatsby, which often use static files to define the paths, you will have home.markdown, about.markdown, so on. Here, everything is actually generated from a YAML file called raw sitemap.yaml, which contains the outline of the entire site. And that's because, as you can see, if you actually look at the result here, it's very repetitive, right? We have these survey blocks or these chart blocks which repeat a lot, so it made sense to actually standardize that instead of having multiple different like physical files that repeat a lot of the same structure. Now these blocks, so we have a kind of three-tiered structure with pages and then blocks, and optionally blocks can have variants, which are let me note the actual site right here. So this would be two different variants of the same chart or sub-blocks, whatever you want to call them. But these are the three tiers that we have, and a block or a page, or I guess a block can be defined inline here, or most commonly use a template, again, to keep things dry and avoid repetition. So in this case, the demographics template is just another YAML file. And so that YAML file will actually specify, well, a couple things. First, which block to use, which block type, which corresponds to a React component, and then what data to load from the GraphQL API and in order to pass it on to the component. So once you understand that, the structure of the repo starts making more sense. You've got here, so we were just in the surveys directory, which contains the different surveys configuration, and then using an environment variable, you can pick which one to activate. You then have most of the things concerning Gatsby here in the src directory. And in this case, in core blocks, we have that vertical bar block, which is used right here. Now, a block will then call on a chart, in this case, vertical bar chart. And the reason why there's this separation between blocks and charts is because in some cases we might want to reuse charts between blocks. So in this case, we have the gender by countries block, which is kind of a unique block that only is used here in this chart. But on the other hand, if you look at the code here, we're calling a gauge bar chart and then just repeating that 10 times. And that is in turn like a generic chart. So we try to reuse the charts as much as possible and leverage having these generic charts that can work in a pretty flexible manner with multiple blocks. So those are blocks and charts, which are right here. And then you have, of course, other components like buttons, sidebars, and so on, layouts. We also have some data style sheets. These are not actually used that much because we've switched to styled components. So these are mostly legacy or more like global styles. And templates finally is the block templates used by the sitemap, which again define the blocks and the GraphQL query for each block. So that's about it. Of course, we have more stuff here, like helpers, you know, all kinds of little components and helpers, but these are kind of ancillary things. The only other big piece of code in that code base is actually what's in charge of generating the sitemap, because uh, the raw sitemap that we saw has a lot of, it has these templates, it has a variable system that can be used to populate the templates, so it actually goes through a transformation in order to generate um, a final sitemap. Um, oh, which actually, where is it? Yeah, okay. Which is, as you can see, much longer. It's kind of the expanded version of the raw sitemap. And so the code to generate that is here in node src, which does a couple things. Generate that sitemap, and then also call the Gatsby APIs, which actually generate the pages. So as you might imagine, um, we want to actually tell Gatsby that, this is a page, and we even have pages for every block. So if you look at an online version and you want to actually share it here, you can see that the URL actually points to a full path that has a corresponding Gatsby page, which has its own metadata and then redirects you to this. So this is so that people can share it um, online, and actual metadata comes up. So you can see that the correct thumbnail and metadata corresponds to that block, and it's not just sending you back to like the overall survey page. So in order to accomplish that, we need to generate these static pages using Gatsby, and that's what this part of the code base accomplishes. Hopefully you don't need to mess with that too much, but just so you understand what's going on here. So there you go, overview of the results code base. Once you understand how everything fits together, it's not that complex, but there are a lot of components, blocks, charts, as you might imagine.